August 2015. A monster typhoon is chewing its way across the island of Taiwan. Near the top of the tallest building in the country, something enormous wakes up. A giant ball of solid steel. 660 tons of it. Roughly the weight of 400 cars, crushed into a sphere. Please do not try this. And it is swinging, loose, indoors. It swings a full meter to one side, then back, the most it has ever moved in its entire life. A little further, and it slams into its emergency stop like a wrecking ball with a grudge. Now, this is the part where your brain files a formal complaint. Because the people who built this tower wanted the giant ball to swing. They spent millions of dollars to hang a 660-ton weight in the sky on 92 cables for exactly one reason: to make it move. They did not build this skyscraper to stand still and behave. They built it to sway, to bend, to rock in a storm like a very nervous tree. Everything you were ever told about building says the opposite. A building should be solid, rigid, deeply boring. It should absolutely not wobble. So why would anyone hang a monstrous pendulum inside a skyscraper and then quietly pray that it swings? And why build the entire tower to bend in the single worst place on Earth to put a tall thing that moves? Excellent questions. Hold on to them, because to answer them, we have to go back to a night that terrified an entire island, and to a very bad day halfway through construction when this tower almost lost. This is Taipei 101. 508 meters of steel and glass, parked 200 meters from a major fault line, standing directly in the path of the nastiest storms on the planet, which is a bit like building the world's tallest house of cards on top of a washing machine. Mid-spin, on purpose. For 6 years, it was the tallest building on Earth, built in just about the least sensible location a human has ever chosen. This is how they pulled it off, and how close it came to not. Welcome to Titan Build. To understand why anyone would build a tower that jiggles, you first have to meet the neighborhood. And the neighborhood has issues. Taiwan sits on the Ring of Fire, which sounds like a heavy metal album, and behaves like one. It is the most violent belt of earthquakes and volcanoes on the planet. The ground here does not rest. It does not even nap. Small quakes rattle the island almost every single day of the year. The reason is buried far below. Down there, two enormous tectonic plates are shoving into each other, one slowly forced under the other, like a very slow, very grumpy escalator. That fight built the island, and it never stopped. It is still going, right now, under the tower, under the streets. Under, technically, everyone. And that is only half the fun. Every summer, some of the strongest typhoons on Earth aim straight at this coast, like they have a personal grudge. Winds over 200 kilometers an hour. Rain that arrives sideways. Year after year after year. And the island already knew from experience exactly what a big one could do. In 1999, a magnitude 7.7 earthquake tore into central Taiwan in the dark, just before 2 in the morning, while almost everyone was asleep. The ground ripped open. Buildings pancaked, floor onto floor onto floor. Around 2,400 people never woke up. The island remembers it by a single date, 9/21. To this day, it is the deadliest earthquake in the island's modern memory. It is not a story here. It is a scar. That was the shadow hanging over the engineers. Because the same year that quake struck, work on this exact tower was just beginning. Which is, you have to admit, incredible timing. They were about to raise the tallest thing in the entire country, in precisely the kind of place that had just killed thousands. After that night, the whole country rewrote the rules. Building codes were torn up and redone. Nothing tall would ever again be allowed to simply stand there and hope for the best. And here is where the answer starts to sneak into view. This tower would not try to out-muscle the earthquake. It would have to be smarter than that. So here is the challenge, stated plainly. build the tallest tower in the world, right here, on ground, that is actively trying to shake it down and blow it over at the same time. Most engineers would offer one word of professional advice: don't. Taiwan built it anyway. Because of course they did. 508 meters, 101 floors, a tower named Taipei 101. But before a single floor could go up, they had to deal with the ground. And the ground was not cooperating. Because the soil under Taipei is soft. Set a tower this heavy on top of it, and it would slowly sink, or lean, and nobody wants a sequel to the leaning tower of anything. So the engineers went digging for solid rock. Way down. 380 steel piles were drilled into the earth beneath the tower. Each one hammered 80 meters down. The deepest of them punch a full 30 meters into solid bedrock, just to be sure. Each pile is 1.5 meters wide and can hold up more than 1,000 tons all on its own. So, a modest little pole around the entire base. They sank a thick concrete wall deep underground, sealing out the water and locking the foundation in place. To reach the bottom, crews dug more than 20 meters straight down into the middle of the city, propping up the walls as they went, so the ground would not casually collapse on top of them. They opened a pit deep enough to swallow a 6-story building, right in the heart of a living, breathing capital. As you do. Only then did the tower have something to stand on that an earthquake could not easily push around. But a deep foundation is not enough, because the real trouble is not at the bottom. It is all the way up top. The taller a building gets, the more it wants to sway, and a 500-meter tower catches the wind like an enormous, very expensive sail. Now, you are probably thinking the obvious thing: just make it stiffer. Thicker walls, more steel. Done. Here is the trap. A tower that is too stiff cannot absorb an earthquake. The shock has nowhere to go, so the frame simply cracks. But make it too flexible, and the wind rocks it so hard that everyone inside turns a delicate shade of green, and the glass starts popping out. Which is bad for the glass, and much worse for whoever is standing below it. Too stiff, it snaps. Too soft, it shakes itself to pieces. Neither option keeps anybody alive. So the engineers did something a little bit magic. They made it stiff and soft. At the same time, the tower is built from 8 stacked modules, each one 8 floors tall, flaring outward as they climb, like a stalk of bamboo. That shape is not just because it looks cool, although it very much does. Bamboo bends in a storm and springs right back. So does this tower. Under the 8 modules sits a wide, sloping base, like a pyramid with the top sliced off, giving the whole thing a nice, planted, hard-to-tip-over stance. And the number 8 is no accident. In Taiwan, 8 is the lucky number, the number of fortune. 8 floors per module, 8 modules up the shaft. A tower running on physics and good luck in equal measure. At the corners stands the real muscle. Massive box columns, some of them wide enough to park a car inside, stuffed full of high-strength concrete. These few super columns carry the weight of the entire tower down into the piles. Everything else basically leans on them and hopes for the best. And every 8 floors, gigantic outrigger trusses tie the inner core to those outer columns. That connection is what forces the whole tower to move as one solid piece. Instead of the floors sliding around and grinding each other into powder, this is not a single stiff block. It is a system tuned so that every part flexes a little and nothing important breaks. Stiff enough to stand up to a typhoon, bendy enough to ride out a quake. Getting that balance right is the entire art of building this absurdly high. They even had to reinvent the elevators. The ones here were the fastest in the world, climbing at over 1,000 meters a minute. That is so fast the cabins have to be sealed and pressure controlled, so your ears do not pop as you get launched toward the clouds like a cannonball in a very nice suit. Every problem this height throws at you, they had to solve one at a time. To really feel it, stand at the base and look straight up. The roof is nearly a third of a mile over your head. Try not to lose your hat. It took years to build, floor by floor, in a crowded city that never once stopped moving around it. And the higher it climbed, the more it stuck out, right into the path of everything trying to knock it down. And then, one afternoon, the ground decided to remind everyone what was actually at stake. March 2002. The tower was only half finished, around the 56th floor, when a powerful earthquake slammed into Taipei. High up on the unfinished structure, two enormous construction cranes tore loose. And they fell, all the way down. Into the street below. 2 crane operators and 3 workers did not go home that day. The half-built tower itself held. Not a single crack in the frame, but everything stopped cold while every bolt and weld was checked, and then checked again. It was a brutal warning, delivered before the building was even finished. The message was short. This ground does not do second chances. So the engineers realized something uncomfortable. The frame alone, no matter how strong, was still not enough. They needed one more thing. And this, at last, is the machine you met at the very start. The giant ball, the one swinging in the storm. Near the very top, between the 87th floor and the 92nd, they hung a pendulum. Not a cute little one. A sphere of solid steel, 5.5 meters across. Big enough to have its own gravity. 660 tons. Heavier than 400 cars, dangling in the sky inside an occupied building. Sleep well. It is built from 41 steel plates, stacked and welded together into one enormous golden ball. It hangs from the 92nd floor on 92 steel cables, each one thicker than your arm. Every one of those cables is spun from more than 2,000 tiny steel wires. They are so strong that even a quarter of them could hold the whole ball alone. The rest are just there for peace of mind. Around the base of the sphere sits a heavy bumper ring. Think of it as the world's most serious guardrail, there to catch the ball if it ever swings too far. And hauling 660 tons of steel nearly 400 meters into the air was its own special nightmare. The ball could not be lifted in one piece, obviously. It was carried up as stacks of plates and assembled in the sky, layer by layer. Near the top of the finished tower, casual. This is a tuned mass damper, the largest one on the planet, and the only one you can walk right up to and stare at in person. And here, at long last, is the answer to the question we opened with. Here is why they wanted it to swing. When wind or an earthquake shoves the tower one way, the ball, hanging free, lags behind and swings the other way. It pulls against the motion. It fights the sway. It can cancel out up to 40% of the tower's movement. Picture a parent gently steadying a rocking cradle. The tower rocks. The ball pushes back. The motion quietly dies. That is the whole trick. The building does not punch the earthquake in the face. It lets a giant weight swing the other way and eats the energy for lunch. And it has to be tuned, like a guitar string. If a guitar string weighed 660 tons, engineers set the ball to sway at the exact rhythm of the tower, so the two always move in perfect opposition. Now watch what happens in a sudden, violent jolt, like an earthquake. Below the ball sit 8 giant hydraulic dampers. In a slow, gentle breeze, they let the ball drift around, relaxed, but hit them with a sharp shock, and they stiffen instantly. They slam the swing into a lockdown, turning all that dangerous motion into plain old heat instead of destruction. The building moves. The ball answers. And the people inside stay upright and mostly clueless. Picture an ordinary afternoon. A quake rolls in from the sea. Up on the high floors, the room tilts just a touch. A cup of coffee ripples. A few loose papers slide an inch across a desk. Someone frowns. Far above them, the golden ball leans the other way and holds the line. A few seconds later, it is over. Most people never even stand up. The ball can swing as far as 1.5 meters before it hits its hard limit. On a normal day, it barely twitches.
Agreed, let's go.
And it is not even the only damper up there. At the very tip of the spire sit two smaller ones, whose only job is to stop the thin needle at the top from rattling itself to bits in the wind. This one machine cost around $4 million, which sounds like a fortune, until you remember it is guarding a $500 million tower and the thousands of people inside. Suddenly, it is a bargain, but the engineers always had one question hanging over them, quietly. What happens when the real test finally shows up? Now we can go back to that storm, the one from the very beginning. They got their answer in 2015. Typhoon Soudelor smashed into Taiwan with winds near 160 kilometers an hour. High in the tower, the golden ball began to move, and move, and move. It swung a full meter to the side, the largest movement ever recorded in the entire history of the building. The closest this machine has ever come to its limit, and it held. The tower barely blinked. The offices inside just kept on working, deadlines and all. For a day and a night, the tower leaned into the storm and let the ball do its thing. Outside, the typhoon screamed against the glass. Inside, the water in the cups barely trembled. That is the exact moment you saw at the start. Not a disaster. Just a very large machine doing precisely what it was built to do, while everyone finished their coffee. And Soudelor was only the loudest test. Year after year, smaller quakes and weaker storms hammer the tower. Every single time, the ball does its quiet work, and almost nobody inside even notices. That 1 meter swing is the whole story. It is the razor-thin line between a tower that sways safely and a tower that tears itself to pieces. And it is not only the huge events that matter. Even a slow, constant sway can make people high up feel seasick. Seasick enough to pack up and leave for good. So the ball works every ordinary day too, quietly smoothing out the tiny movements nobody is ever meant to feel. So people started asking the obvious, slightly nervous question. What about the truly big one? The earthquake that comes around once every 2,500 years. Good news. That is exactly what this tower was designed for. From the very first blueprint. The frame is built to bend and survive the strongest quake expected here in 25 centuries. The ball is built to kill the sway. The foundation is built to hold when the soft ground turns to jelly. Every single layer has one job: keep the people inside alive when the island tries to shrug them off. And here is the strangest twist in the whole story: what that terrifying ball turned into. They gave it a nickname: the Damper Baby. A 660-ton block of steel that could flatten a building turned into a smiling cartoon mascot with a little face. Millions of visitors now ride the elevator up, past the clouds, just to stand in front of the thing that keeps the whole tower alive, and to buy the plush toy version. Think about that for a second. The safety system is not hidden in a basement. It is the main attraction. It has merchandise. Because Taipei 101 was never really about being the tallest. Anyone with enough money and enough steel can stack floors into the sky. The real achievement was building that height, in the worst possible place, and making it so safe that the people inside barely think about the churning danger under their feet. That golden ball is now studied by engineers all over the world. Towers rising in earthquake and typhoon zones everywhere are quietly copying the idea. Because the lesson of Taipei 101 is simple, and honestly a little unsettling. You cannot stop the earthquake. You cannot stop the typhoon. The ground will always shake, and the wind will always come. Every time. That is the whole shift in thinking. For centuries, builders tried to be rigid enough to resist anything the world threw at them. This tower does the opposite. It survives by giving way, just a little, and never too much. So you do not try to overpower nature. That is a fight you lose. You build something that can move with it, and flatly refuse to fall. And that, finally, is the answer to the puzzle we opened with. A building that sways on purpose is not a weak building. It is the toughest kind there is. 25 years after 9/11, the tallest tower in the country still stands on the same restless island. And it has never once been in real danger of falling. The island still shakes. The typhoons still come, every single year, right on schedule. And high above the city, a 660-ton golden ball hangs silently in the sky. Calm, patient, waiting for the next one. Sleep tight. If a machine like this fascinates you, subscribe to Titan Build. Because the next thing we take apart was built to survive something even worse.